think it's very obvious. We basically know that aid has failed to generate economic growth and to reduce poverty. Over the past 60 years, there's been $1 trillion of aid that's been sent to Africa, and in those two metrics, it has certainly not been able to meet up where it was supposed to deliver.
So what's gone wrong?
Well, it's a whole host of things. The ground on corruption is very well covered. Issues of Dutch disease, where it kills off the domestic export sector, which is very crucial to these growing economies. Infusing aid dependency to the point where there's very little entrepreneurship, and the investment environment is very not conducive to attracting foreign direct investment. All these things are kind of really an artifact of large flows of aid coming into the African continent.
Isn't there, though, a sort of fundamental principle of society itself, which is those who have a lot help those who don't, and one of the ways you do it is aid?
Well, I mean, I'm not objecting to the view that some people feel that there's a strong moral imperative to help Africa. I'm just offering the way in which we can help Africa in the most effective way. Development, I believe, is not rocket science. It's very clear what works in terms of development. Africa has got lots of role models. It doesn't have to look to Europe and the United States. It can look to very rapidly emerging new economies and learn what they've done. And by and large, those economies have not relied on aid. They have gone to the capital markets, they've attracted trade, fostered foreign direct investment, they've encouraged microfinance, which is something very important, and we can do on an individual basis. It doesn't have to be through the governments.
But it's not a level playing field. You've got drought, you've got political instability, you've got corruption, and the list goes on and on and on. It's not easy to follow these models.
No, and I'm not saying this is going to be easy. I mean, what I'm suggesting is that we as society, global society, need to decide whether we want Africa to continue to be a drag on the global economy, or to participate as an equal participant on the global stage. If we want to really see Africa and Africans really as equal partners, and these economies to grow and people to break out of the chains of poverty, this is the model. This is the model. The model that I'm proposing is the model that we know works.
So if it isn't through aid, it's through trade?
It's absolutely through trade. It's through capital markets. It's through foreign direct investment. It's through things that we already know to be the case. It's through entrepreneurship. It's through to encouraging participation of locals.
But doesn't aid fill some of the gaps that trade doesn't? Infrastructure, for example. Who's necessarily going to invest in that? Well, that comes through aid.
Well, it doesn't necessarily come through aid because, as we know, 60 years on, there's not much infrastructure in Africa. I was just in Nigeria not too long ago. They don't have a strong infrastructure, electricity system. They're relying on diesel. It is the largest country in sub-Saharan Africa, population-wise, and 60 years on, it has no infrastructure to speak of.
Who's going to invest in health? Who's going to invest in education?
People, to me, that is the role of the government to step in. But government will and can raise taxes in an environment where the economy is growing. In the places like Africa, the countries are not growing because there's no entrepreneurial growth in the entrepreneurial sector. There's no investment coming in. So as long as the countries are not growing, the government cannot tax to raise the money to finance the social services that you're talking about, education and healthcare. And that problem, which leads us back to this vicious cycle where you go to the aid donors, the donors continue to give aid, and you're stuck in this cycle. I mean, it's time for Africa to break out of that cycle. A lot of poor countries of Asia were poorer than African countries 40, 50 years ago. They're now richer than African countries, not because they sat back and relied on aid, but because they figured out what the non-aid solution to development was, and that's the solution that I think Africa needs to rely on.